Hi, hello everyone. Hi, good evening. Sincere apologies for last week. Okay, so I'll share my screen and we will hit the ground. Okay, can we see my screen?
Yes, I can, yeah. Yes, we can, FJ. We can see your screen. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, just a minute. I want to be sure I'm navigating. Okay. Okay. All right. So last week we looked at Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Administrator series, and I just run us through most of the things or overview that we had last week, and then the two additional advanced enhancement protection features that we'll be looking at in Defender for Endpoint today. So in summary, we looked at how the Defender for Endpoint, you know, the buzzword we say is that it's beyond your antivirus. So the Defender for Endpoint, we looked and understood how its protection that it gives on the endpoint is just beyond, you know, antivirus. And even in the antivirus feature, how it uses intelligent investigation, you know, detection mechanisms. We looked at that. Once the Defender for Endpoint is on your device, one of the benefits is that you'll be able to have threat and vulnerability management visibility. You'll be able to enforce attack surface reduction policies. You'll also be able to do endpoint detection and response. And in addition to that, you know, you'll be able to have investigation and remediation. So when you look at this, you see that this is just beyond your typical, you know, antivirus that's supposed to help you detect and prevent anti-malware, anti-spyware, or antivirus intrusion. This is a whole endpoint protection suite that would help you to, you know, protect, detect, investigate, and also even respond to advanced threats on that endpoint. Then we looked at also how you would want to onboard this device. We went ahead to look at that depending on how your organization is structured. If your organization has devices on-prem and you're using System Center, the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint allows you to onboard those devices. If your devices are connected directly straight to Azure, your Microsoft Defender also allows you to connect those devices. But we understood that the concept of the onboarding was to be able to point the existing sensors that come inbuilt to Windows 10, Windows 11, Windows 2019, help these existing sensors now have a direction as to where they were going to, you know, push their telemetry data to. We also saw that Defender for Endpoint was available on Windows Server 2016 and 2012, but will require agent installation. However, but for 2019 and 2010 and 11, the sensors were already inbuilt, and we understood the functionality of this sensor, that the existence of this sensor on the endpoint automatically meant that the whole Defender for Endpoint capabilities, the TVM, attack surface reduction, EDR, automatic investigation and remediation, were all going to be functional or all going to be able to be achieved or used just because of the sensor. So we understood how to onboard using group policy or Intune or System Center, and how these devices, you know, would send their telemetries to Defender for Endpoint, and how you can integrate this with your on-premise identity. We also looked at that, you know, from a security operations perspective, the Defender for Endpoint, you know, now the detection on Defender for Endpoint would give you, you know, capabilities and provide you advanced attack detection mechanisms, that are almost close to real time, and also the ability to integrate Defender for Endpoint with Microsoft Threat Experts helps you to handle zero-day attack. Okay, we also understood that when a threat is detected, alerts are now created in the system that allows a security analyst or operator analyst to be able to remediate. And then the aggregation of these alerts become an incident that you can track and remediate, or you can track and be able to trace that these multiple alerts that I've gotten all are functions of this particular incident that has happened. The Defender for Endpoint also works with the concept of the zero trust concept, which is it assumes breach. Once it sees something that is not supposed to be how it should on an endpoint, it automatically assumes breach. And once it does that, what it does is begins to see how to ensure that that device is isolated. So it gives you the ability to isolate that device to be able to carry out your investigations. We saw all of that. Please, if you have questions, let me know. We also looked at that the Defender for Endpoint was available for different types of operating systems: Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Android, and iOS. So this was not an antivirus solution, as you would say. The full-blown endpoint protection took into recognition that today in the organization, even with the BYOD concept, with the bring your own device and the ideology around device management, we had different variety of operating system running in the organization. And so it needed, if we wanted to make sure that we had a full security posture of devices in our organization, Microsoft understood the assignment there and knew that it had to have a solution that was compatible with these different operating systems. So the Defender for Endpoint is compatible with Windows, with Mac, with Linux, with Android, and with iOS. We also looked at when you want to set up the environment, what do you do as an administrator? Depending on your role in the organization there, so that you would have to go and set up where your device will have to push telemetries to. So based on your organization's data privacy policy, you would choose the location where you want your telemetries data to be pushed to. And that Microsoft had a retention period of 6 months. And this retention period of 6 months allowed you to be able to see incidents, alerts, and configurations that have existed and how you've grown for 6 months. However, the solution also allows you to integrate to your own SIEM solution in the event where you wanted to extend or replicate these detections into your own SIEM solution. As I said, we looked at how you had to onboard, the different versions of operating system that you could onboard, the different methods of onboarding, the different available methods that you could use to onboard, and different operating systems that you can onboard, and that onboarding is the first step to ensuring that Defender for Endpoint is in your environment. And that the good thing with onboarding is that once you have onboarded one device, it has the ability to do device discovery and begin to tell you devices that are on your network or that are seen in your network tenant that have not yet been onboarded. Another thing we looked at was role-based access control. Like we all know, in different organizations, there are different people with responsibilities. One of the things you want to make sure, irrespective of the fact that the Defender for Endpoint is a cloud service, Microsoft has created the ability for us to do role-based access control. What's role-based access control? Delegation of roles, delegation of privileges. You do not want one person to be the whole security administrator. So Microsoft allows us to be able to create, roles based on people's functionality or people's what people are expected to do on Microsoft Defender or the security platform. So Microsoft allows you to create custom rules that can allow you to delegate what people can do. And the good thing is that you can extend these roles to device groups. So we'll be seeing how you can create device groups and users groups, and now extend how these different administrative roles can manage these device groups. So, for instance, you have people who their roles are security operations. They want to probably be able to view what is happening in the security.microsoft portal. They want to see what is happening in the organization. They want to see the kind of detections. They want to see the secure score. They want to see the exposure level. they want to see the inventory of devices that are on the network, you can create a role targeted to that, function. There are people, the guys who are in the threat and vulnerability management team. There are people who, in information security, their role is to say, what's our exposure level? What's the kind of threats that are in our environment? How are we matching this detection of threats in our environment to the devices? How many devices match this type of threat? What's the exposure landscape of our environment? You can create specific role to this functionality, call them threat and vulnerability management, that can only view the data. You can also go ahead to say, okay, people are responsible for remediation. These people will not only view, they'll be responsible for remediating, whether at the security level or at the threat and vulnerability level. You can create different role based, even up to people who would have to be able to use the live response. We saw how the live response allowed us to be able to initiate commands to the devices. And so people who have the ability to be able to do this high-level troubleshooting, you can create those different roles and functionality for them in the Defender for Endpoint. So it doesn't matter that it is a cloud service. It allows us to have those granular role-based access control on the platform. And while looking at role-based access control, you can delegate it to even device groups. So for instance, for those who work with Active Directory on-prem, you created your devices into what we call organizational units, OUs. Either you group them as IT, control, compliance. That way you're able to know the devices that are inside each department or each division. And then for those who manage SCCM, we call them device collections. You would create collections, and then you put devices in these buckets of collections. Now for security.microsoft.com, or rather in the Azure management platform, devices, it had what we call flat structure. So devices are better grouped in device groups. So you could say these are IT devices, these are executive devices, these are compliance devices, these are people in card services. So that, for instance, when you want to match your PCI DSS controls, and you want to say things that are in scope, it's easy for you to say, oh, these are the devices that are in the PCI DSS team, the teams that manage cards, and we want to scan these devices to see if there's any form of PAN on them, PAN data on them. Because you've created a device group, you can target rules and policies to those device groups. So in security.microsoft.com, we have the ability to create device groups, use them to limit access to the kind of alerts and detections that happen to them, use them to limit access to the users that have access to them. We can also use it to configure different types of auto remediation. We can say, okay, you should do self auto remediation, you should do full auto remediation, depending on what we want to achieve for those type of business units or user groups. We can achieve them by creating device groups, and assigning these policies to them. We can even assign specific remediation levels that require different types of automatic or automated investigations. You can also filter and say these devices, are the only devices that will be in this device group. And the good thing is you can also now tie those custom administrative roles that you have created. You can now tie them to the device group. So you can say Joy, Sophia that are in SOC team, even though we're in SOC team, the only thing you want us to do on executive devices is to be able to remediate. So when you create a custom role, we can only see remediate, while the other people probably can only view, or some people in the SOC team might not even have the ability to view executive devices or be able to even remediate anything on them. Okay, we went ahead to see how after you have onboarded, it begins to create an inventory for you. So I don't know who can, I haven't done ISO certification in a while, but I know that there is a control in ISO that requires you to have like an asset inventory. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that there's a control that requires, because when you know your assets inventory, you can be able to match, the security requirements on them. the good thing with Defender for Endpoint is that once one device has been onboarded in that network, it has the ability to do network discovery and begin to populate your device inventory for you. And when it begins to populate them, it begins to tell you if they've been onboarded and if they've not been onboarded. And you begin to, just because of those sensors that are there and that they belong to the same network. So we saw how from the device list, you can also see risk level, exposure level, the operating system, the health state, when last that device was, you know, when last that device was seen on the network. You can even customize to have tags on those devices and see those devices, you know, what tags are they? Are they Windows 7 devices? Are they Windows 10? Are they, you can tag them. You can create custom tags for them. You can say executive devices, you can say executive directors, you can say control, you can say fraud department. You can, those tags that you have created for devices, you can use the filtering view to see those kind of devices on your device list. So while we're looking at the beauty about the security function, we can also see that somehow there's a subset of asset inventory and asset management that the security that Microsoft platform creates for us, just because the Defender for Endpoint sensor is able to discover these devices. You all agree with me that, you know, when devices are not in the visibility of the security team, those endpoints are now loopholes or avenues that attackers can use to get into the network. So you want to actually have visibility into your organization, all the devices down your network and their level of exposure, how much the devices on your network can expose you into being a target for an attacker. I think finally, we also looked at how to investigate devices. When an action has happened on the device, how do you investigate it? What do you check to see? How do you see the different detections that have happened based on the behavioral blocking? And we went to see the full platform. So for today, we'll just be looking at any response. I just did a quick rundown of what we did last 2 weeks. Okay, so for today, we want to look at one of the functionalities of the Defender for Endpoint, which is attack surface reduction. The attack surface reduction is another enhanced way of creating protection on the endpoint. And so the attack surface reduction enables us to create attack surface reduction rules, to create hardware-based isolations, to even do application control, exploit protection, network protection, web protection, control folder access, and even device control, just by using the attack surface reduction capabilities that is on Defender. For the attack surface reduction, there are different rules that we can create, you know, on the Defender for Endpoint. I'll be showing us shortly the different rules that we can create, and then explain why, you know, as an administrator, one of the things you want to do is have these rules, you know, enabled in your environment. It helps to ensure that your secure score is high and that your exposure is low. Some of the samples of the attack surface rules will be things like block executable content from email clients and webmail. One of the ways that threat is being sent is through phishing. And when phishing mails are sent to targets, what you always have is embedded, you know, files that are in those embedded files in those emails. And most times what you have are those files are masqueraded with executables. So if for any reason, if for whatsoever reason, your email security platform is not able to pick that detection, and then that file gets into your environment and your system and needs to run, or probably somebody is opening a personal email on their corporate device. You know, the moment someone is opening a personal email on the corporate device, that email is no more going through your email gateway. So at that point, your email gateway cannot do anything. That person has bypassed one of your security platforms because they are opening a personal email. And so that email will never go through your email gateway. But that email is being opened on your corporate device and endpoint in your environment. that you want to secure. So those are one of the, the capabilities of the attack surface reduction, to say that, it will reduce, the attack that can happen on this endpoint. So in the event where that file, when it's being downloaded, has embedded in it an executable, it has the ability to be able to block it. Or peradventure, you went to the internet, you need a tool to do your job, and you look at this, went to this website, saw the free tool, innocently thinking this is a legitimate tool, but embedded in it are, executables that have payloads. The attack surface reduction rule has the ability to block executable content from email clients. Also, if you look at another ways when phishing emails are being targeted to our organizations, lots of time it comes in through Office applications, okay? And these Office applications will want to probably, so a typical Microsoft Word, would have embedded in it a payload. Now, innocently, when you're opening the Microsoft Word, actually what should be running is the winword.exe process, right? Embedded in it are payloads, so that we now want to trigger additional processes that are not Microsoft Word. To you as a user, you're not seeing that. What you're seeing is an email you got with a Word document, and in trying to view that Word document, you double clicked on it or probably downloaded it and then double clicked on it to open it. And then that thing that you're opening, to you, a user, what you're seeing is that you're opening a Word document. To the system, for that Word document to open, the WinWord process has to run, right? And the WinWord process is a legitimate process. When that process is running, because they've embedded in that document, payloads and child processes, it begins to activate other child processes that it needs to exploit. The attack surface reduction rules have the ability to see this behavior and detect them. But if you do not, your typical antivirus solution will not address this. Your normal antivirus solution will not address it, because at this point, it has not yet infected. It is trying to be able to run itself, right? So typically, your antivirus will not detect this. This is why we're saying that Defender for Endpoint is not just an antivirus. The attack surface reduction rule, which is a functionality and capability in the Defender for Endpoint, will allow you to be able to detect child processes that run off Office applications. Also executable contents too that run off Office applications, and also code injections that run off Office applications. These are ways that these are ways that the attackers use to push these threat vectors into our organization. So you just see a typical email from you legitimately is an email. Somebody poached you on LinkedIn, had a very nice, interesting job function, engaged you, looking very enticing process. You complete, the company looks legitimate. You completed the recruitment process, and then they said, we're going to make you an offer. And then we said, before we make you an offer, you need to, they even probably send you the offer. Nothing is wrong with the offer. Nice. And then they say, we need to onboard you. At this point, they've gotten your confidence. You've seen an offer. You've accepted the offer. You've sent back and forth email. You've seen the organization online, legitimate. You can see a CEO. You can see a HR. You can see people who have identities that look like they are working in this organization. To you, everything looks legit. And then you have even seen the offer and accepted. And then they now send you and say, we're collecting data that we need to use to prepare XYZ for you. Innocently, you get a Word document, and as you click it, child processes need to run, executable need to run at the back end, code injection has been on that file. You do not know what you're seeing is a Word document or an Excel file. The attack surface reduction will detect this behavior and will flag it with an alert and incident. Any question?
No question. I don't think I have any question for now. I don't know if anyone else wants to speak while you're.
No question.
Okay, so I'll take us to see how this is configured. Okay. So once you go to your endpoint.microsoft.com and you go to endpoint security, you would see here attack surface reduction. Can we see my screen?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay, attack surface reduction. And all you need to do is come and create a policy. We want to do attack surface reduction rules, and then we create. Now, these are the different policies, even for Adobe Reader. Adobe Reader 2, they've the attackers have advanced now, and you have PDF files that have injected child processes in them and can run. So it's a PDF, comes in as a PDF file. It's not coming in as a Word document. It's coming as a PDF file, but it has sub-processes embedded in that file. The defender for endpoint will detect it, that this is not the Adobe Reader.exe process alone that is running. It's trying to call up additional processes that has nothing to do with Adobe Reader, and then it will flag it. What we recommend that you do in your organization is to set this in audit mode. When you set all these policies in audit mode, block Adobe Reader, execution of potentially obfuscated scripts, all of these policies, we recommend that you put them in audit mode first. Reason being that once you put it in audit mode, it will allow you to further prove that these things exist in your organization. For those of you who have done antivirus configurations, EDR configurations, you will know that baseline configurations, one of the fights that security always have with system admins is that they feel like security has come to frustrate their job. So it's always a struggle to convince them that these things exist. As long as they don't see where they have been attacked, most organizations do not understand that the attacker can be in your environment, gathering information, explorating data, and nothing has happened. A major hit has not happened. But because there's no visibility into what's happening on those endpoints, everybody is coasting. Everybody is saying nothing. We're not yet hacked, right? And so security always struggles with getting system admins to agree with them on these things. So good. One of the ways you can prove to them that these behaviors exist in your environment is to configure this and set them in audit mode. Once you set it in audit mode, it begins to detect, but it will not action a block. But it will begin to detect it and then feed it into your security.microsoft dashboard. And you can now see that these detections are happening and these behaviors are in your environment. So that you can, after like 30 days period, you can now spool this and say, see it, and then probably now categorize it, which I'll be explaining to you how you want to create attack surface reduction for business units so that you do not, each business unit has a unique behavior. I'll give an example. Guys, if you're working in a bank or a financial institution, the guys in treasury system will not, baseline of their system will not be exactly as the same for the guys in the marketing department, for instance. So the guys who are in trade would definitely have additional applications that a typical marketer does not have, right? In fact, most times the marketer will be using tons and tons of web applications and never even really want to, use applications while the office. They're on the go, they're trying to pursue clients, pursue deals. So most times they're not even in the office. They're always on their mobile devices or their tablets, which is one of the good things about the Defender for Endpoint. It can be extended to any kind of device. But the point here I'm trying to make is that you have different business units. So do not have one attack surface reduction. So what you're going to find is if probably you see an audit behavior that shows that, block Adobe Reader from creating child processes, we can see audit alerts right? Showing that this is happening. But when we trace it, it's happening every time the Treasury application is trying to open. And after we've investigated it, we've confirmed that there's actually a legitimate sub-process that the Adobe reader that is called whenever the Treasury guys probably get an FX transaction, an FX agreement from their Forex trading bank that is legitimate on that application. I'm just giving an instance. If that kind of cases, what you would typically see people do is go to that process and allow it. Because for them, they'll say, oh yes, we can see, but it's legitimate. No, it's legitimate to which business unit? It's not legitimate to the whole organization, because ideally it shouldn't happen. But if you say, oh, the application that we are seeing that is doing this detection is a false positive, is legit, we want to allow it. We want to allow it for what business case? So based on what I've explained here, who can tell me what you would do and how you would isolate or still allow that sub-process to run, but still block it for every other person? What will you do? Who has an idea? Are you guys quiet on me? Okay, can we remember when I talked about device groups, right? So this is where device groups will play. Okay? Now, remember, if a business unit requires any of these child processes to be excluded for them, because when we put it in audit mode and we run for 30 days or for 60 days or for 90 days, depending on how you want to stretch it, we found out that yes, these processes are legit, but the ASR rule is going to block it if we switch it to block, because the ASR rule is seeing it and is notifying us, but there are legit processes that need to run or legitimate activities that need to run. The first thing you need to do is create a separate policy for that organization. So I'll give an example. This is the general policy you want to create for everybody in the organization, and you've changed it to audit. You can see there are lots of, use advanced protection against ransomware. We've looked at all this on block office application. Now we've changed all of this to audit, right? Ideally, what you will find a typical administrator do is come here and say attack surface reduction only as exclusions, and then come here and put an exclusion of that process. Let's assume this is the unique application process that we need to exclude. This is typically what you will see people do in an organization, and then they will come here, say next. We want to add, this is where you apply it. This is where you apply the rule. So we are going to do it to everybody in the organization, all device groups. And typically what you see them will do is come here and exclude a particular device. But for now, the first thing is we want to create this rule for the organization, ASR rule, audit mode for everybody. We've done that. And the rule has been created. Now we have a business unit that needs to allow, that needs a particular process allowed. What people would do is come to this policy what you find people typically do is come to the policy and take that legitimate process and exclude it like I did here. What this means is that you have said that anywhere this process is, attack surface reduction should not work. The consequences of this is the child processes that have been tied to this will fly. That's not what you want to do. You want to be able to say that we have found out that this is only applicable to the guys in Treasury. So the first thing we want to do is come to our groups. Create a new group. Can go as far as saying if there's a service ticket number for it, you can put it here. And then we look for the device. Look for the device and then we add it. And then secure it. So what have I done? I have created a device group called Treasury. This device group will have only the Treasury department inside it. What did I call it? Okay. I've created a device group that has only the Treasury device inside it, or devices as the case may be. You can add all the devices in, right? And that's it. This is where a bit of digression. This is where I can say these are the administrators that would have access to that device group. But here, I just want to show us how you can make exclusion. Now we have a device group called Treasury. If we go back to our task surface reduction, and we say, I need to exclude block Adobe Reader from creating child processes for the guys in Treasury. It's okay for the guys in Treasury. Like I said, it's been in audit mode. You've taken out your data. Security has reviewed it. You've gotten the necessary review. You've gotten the necessary approvals. They've said, no, it's affecting operations. Treasury, it's high for us. It's no, we are okay. We can deal with that risk. Enable it for Treasury. Please, we can't deal. It's frustrating our process. And you are explaining to them, this application shouldn't work like this. They're saying, make the exclusion. Fine, you get all the approval. Now you need to apply it. What do? Don't go apply for everybody. Have your device group Treasury and then come back and duplicate this policy and call it doesn't matter what name you put, please, depending on your naming convention in your organization. You can even come here and put exception approved by CISO, put the date. So I've created a duplicate, right? Now you go to that rule and edit the rule and say they want this one to off. They don't, let's assume it was blocked. Don't do anything off it. Then you can off it. Or you can now leave this one in block, since remember you want to go and switch everybody in the old rule you want to go and switch everybody in the first rule to block, but this one you want to leave it to audit. So even though they are telling you, oh, don't block the guys in Treasury. So we put it in audit. After 90 days, we wanted to switch the main rule to block. And they say, don't block for for treasury. We're saying this thing, leave it in audit. Fine, you create the new rule. It's still here in audit. And then you come here to, who are you going to apply the second rule to? Here. You apply it to the audit team, to the treasury team, sorry. So you have two rules, then you come back to the first one that you created. 90 days has passed, we've looked at it, now we're going to go into block mode. You've gotten the sign off, you come and you switch everything here to block. So you now have two rules, and then you repeat the same. If there's another department like that, create a device group. Do not come to exclusion and begin to exclude processes because a particular department is complaining. Create device group, create that exception to that particular rule. So you can see that every other rule will be. Do not do this. Do not come here excluding processes from attack surface reduction rule. Yes, Microsoft has put it here, but as a security administrator who wants to ensure that you are doing the right thing and that the posture of your organization is you have the right configuration, we do not recommend to use this over experience. So we do not do exclusions to processes. What we do, I'll repeat again, is first thing, if your organization does not have attack surface reduction rule, don't just come create the rule for the first time and put it on block. No, you break things. Your organization doesn't have attack surface reduction rule existing. Create the rule for the first time, put everything on audit, assign to all devices and monitor. Depending on how long, 30 days, 60 days, export the data that you have and take it for a review. You'll be able to see across your organization the behavior and then get approval to block. If they say block for everybody, makes your life easy, you go to the general rule like we have done, block, and you apply to everybody. If there are certain rules that need to be excluded, create those rules. So another way that we actually, this from experience, what I normally would do is I will not even call here, I won't even call the rule, sorry. From experience, what I've done that has enabled me to ensure that the organization is secure, I don't create the exception per department. I create the device rule, and then I create the exception per ASR rule. What do I mean? I come here and I say, this was the first one. I'll call this exclusion for Adobe processes. And if you look at that, you look at the rule, I would block every other thing and I will leave only this one. Because what they want was for Adobe. They did not say for everything. The reason is so that if there's another department too that wants Adobe excluded for them and the approval has been gotten, that we should exclude child processes from running, which, you know, if I'm in an organization, I always fight it. I have my way of proving to them, if you want me to do exclusion, you have to put your blood on that exception letter. So what I normally would do or recommend, you know, over time with work is create all the attack surface rules, create the 10 or 12 of them individually. So create a rule called exclusion of Adobe this, another one, exclusion of execution of this. Create all these rules, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Create each of them individually here. Each of them individually. So on each rule, like if you open this Adobe project, only Adobe one that was in audit. The second one will be only the next rule that will be in audit, and every other thing will block. So that if an organization comes and is specific to their tax surface reduction rule that they want exclusion, and we have a device group for that department, or we know that device as an individual device, we will just come to that exclusion rule and add them here. And every other thing will be blocked. Only that particular exclusion rule is what will be excluded for them. I don't know if we got it. That's a way. This is one of the ways that you ensure security enhancement in your environment. Do not go making exclusion at global rules. And that's the same thing I'll be showing us to when we come to on the antivirus too. What we see people do is to go and make exclusions at the root rule. No. If the organizational standard is block this, create one rule block. If you now have exceptions, create the same rules in calling it exception of what you want, exception, and then adding only the applicable membership. So every other person will match this rule. Only those devices in these collections will match this rule. And this rule that they're even matching is only for exception ABC. I don't know if that makes sense. The same thing for those who are managing antivirus. I'll quickly touch on that because I know that we didn't look at that. Irrespective of even the antivirus solution you are using, never come to your antivirus policies. This is an antivirus configuration. And we'll see where it talks about exclusion. Never come to your policies and just exclude. So what you typically see people do is either they will disable the antivirus. It's frustrating me. It's not allowing my program. Every antivirus detection that blocks you tells you what they are blocking. They will mention, for any application to run on your system, it's tied to a process. Whether it's a Windows, Linux, it's tied to a process. So if something is technically being blocked by your antivirus or by your attack surface rule, it's blocking a process. If you have approval that that process is legitimate and you get approval to exclude it, do not go turning off antivirus, do not go turning off attack surface reduction for those departments. Do not go turning off antivirus, do not go for those departments, right? Apologies, please. Okay, do not go making exclusions. What will happen when you do root exclusions, like I've shown you, is that you see people say the antivirus is not working. When we come in for audit, the antivirus is working. What they did was turn it off. They had antivirus policy deployed and turned off the protection because a particular department or a particular team or a particular server, it was frustrating. It's fine. Who went to the logs to look at the logs? It will tell you the process it is blocking. So I just showed us how for attack surface reduction, you can make exclusions to each of the rules, but tie it to the devices or the department that need that exclusion. Do not exclude for everybody in the organization. Remember, you want to reduce your attack surface. So the moment you exclude for everybody, you have not reduced your attack surface. So for antivirus, it's the same thing. Every antivirus will give you a section, like you can see, that you want to exclude. Do not, I tell people, I say, do not exclude extensions. Do not exclude processes. I will argue it. Exclude parts, and I'll give an example. WinWord.exe, when you install it on your system, it goes to install in a location, and then you will now see that application there. So if you call up Microsoft Word on your system, what is actually happening is that it's going to that part where Microsoft Word was installed, right? And it goes there to get Microsoft Word to run, right? Let's assume Microsoft Word is not Microsoft solution and is a third-party application that needs to run. And then probably it's on a server or it's on a workstation. And the guys are saying, your antivirus is frustrating me. Every time I want to run it, it's blocking it. Meanwhile, this is a legitimate application. You get audit, you get control, you get information security. Everybody signs that this is legitimate. They come to you as the administrator. Do not just come and take that process and put it. Reason. I don't know who can tell me the reason. Who knows? Who has experienced this in the organization? I can tell you this is 90% of the reasons why people say antivirus don't work. The reason is simple. If I'm injecting a payload, you know who can remember last week when we looked at one of the attack simulations that we did, that was on the server that had happened. It was using PowerShell. PowerShell was going to run, but embedded in PowerShell was a script with Notepad, right? Notepad is also legitimate. But if you look, PowerShell also is legitimate. So if attack surface reduction was enabled, it will not even allow that thing run because it will see that there's a sub-process. If you leave that part too, from an antivirus perspective, let's assume it was an application installed and you say Notepad. Notepad can only run from, I think, Win32 location. That's where notepad.exe is. If it's trying to run from another place, it would not work if you use excluded parts. But if you use excluded process, when attackers masquerade their threat vectors and use legitimate processes like SVC host or ls.exe, we don't exclude those kind of processes. What they do is they will not be running from there because a fraudulent process cannot run from the same location as the original process. So what you have is that if a Trojan is on your system, they are in a different directory, and that's where they are running from. So if you go and exclude process, what will happen is that even the false process, the compromised process would be running and the antivirus solution will not detect it because you have excluded a process. But if you say the path is C/program files 86/ VMware/vmdx.exe, that is the path where the VMware.exe that needs to run is. And I take that path and I come here and exclude that path. What I'm saying is, anytime you see VMware.exe running from this path, do not do all the antivirus gibberish on it. Allow it. Don't frustrate it trying to scan. Don't frustrate it trying to do read write. But any other place you see it, apply the security restriction. You will find that you would have optimized your endpoint security and you would ensure that you have reduced the attack that can happen on those endpoints. I'm cautious of time, so we'll go on. Any other question, please? So please never make exclusions to processes. I would argue it, for instance, guys who manage database, they don't like antivirus. So even when we're doing things like Defender for Endpoint for servers, what we typically do is, oh, your SQL.exe is a legitimate database service, okay? And you're saying SQL.exe, we do not, or the database itself, we do not want to scan it. Fine. Where are they on the server? There's a directory. It's either called e/this, f/that. If it is a Linux, it's ./sd. If there's a directory, we take that directory and we exclude it. We do not exclude that process so that the protection policy can still apply to that endpoint and run its detection and not exclude processes that have been hijacked or compromised. Is that making sense for anybody? Okay, guys, this is almost 1 hour. Any question?
Yes, it does. FJ, and no one has any question yet. I don't know if I should have to unmute people to talk. It feels there has not been no question has been dropped. Nothing. I think everyone understands it's up to this point, I believe.
That's good. Okay, I would actually want to stop here for questions. Okay, all right. So let's go. Let's look at what we call network indicators. Now, for endpoint protection, another cool enhanced feature that it has is called network indicators. So, you know, when there's an attack, you will have, or when there's a particular threat vectors, they have IOCs, or there's an IP address, or there's a URL, depending on how detections happen. As a security person, there could be a release that says, oh, there are IOCs. These IOCs, if you see them in your environment, it means that XYZ possibilities, XYZ kind of threat exists in your environment. So you first of all want your detection solutions, whenever they see these IOCs on any devices, they should block it. What we use to achieve that in Defender for Endpoint is network indicators. Where do you get that setting? You come under settings, and my system is a bit slow. Can you still see my screen? Is my screen still visible? Settings.
No, FJ, it's not visible. Could you please reshare it again?
Okay. Okay.
I think I accidentally pressed something. I'm trying to make you the co-host. I don't know why it's not showing.
I don't know. Challenge open. Different time to display.
Actually, you can go ahead and share your screen. I don't think it's visible yet. Oh yeah, we can now. Yeah.
Something strange is happening. It's not allowing me to go to. Just being blank. Okay, let me open another tenant and check. I don't know. This is strange. It's supposed to display something here. I'm just going to finish another 10 just be sure. So this stream is not working. Apologies. I don't know why the network indicator page is not opening. Guys, I would like to apologize. Something strange is happening. The network indicator page is not opening, and that's actually the next part of what we wanted to look through. It would show us how to customize and how to create IOC, block IOCs, block IP addresses, block domains that have been flagged. So when you get like a bulletin that talks about a particular vulnerability that exists and that this is how these threats can be identified on your endpoint, what you want to do is to get approval and then block this either an IOC or web, or if a particular web page that you don't want people to go to, you can use the Defender for endpoint and network indicators to block it. I don't know why this is not opening for me. I like to apologize because that's basically where I wanted us to look at next, where we look at how to block the network indicators, put a particular URL, and then see how my system will not be able to get to that URL. But unfortunately, that's not displaying. Having said that, you know, in a summary, like we've seen, Defender for Endpoint is not just an antivirus. As an administrator, you have the ability to configure your antivirus, your endpoint firewall, your attack surface reduction rules that allow you to improve your endpoint detection and response policies, that allow you to improve on the posture of your environment, you know, and the recommendation is that try as much as possible not to do exclusions to single processes or exclusions to applications just by excluding their processes. Exclude where that process exists and the full path where the process exists, not the full path with a wildcard, the full path referencing the process. That's what you use for the exclusion. And this would help you as an administrator to enhance, you know, the endpoint security. On that note, I'll call today's class an end, and then for next week, we'll be looking at the threats and vulnerability management of Defender for Endpoint, how it helps us to do vulnerability management and threat management. So for those who are who have to do scan and worry about how they push agents to endpoints, we'll see how Defender for Endpoint will pull these telemetries and help us see threats and vulnerability that exist on endpoint. And as a TVM administrator, TVM security administrator, you can ensure compliance or increase or improve on your exposure level using Microsoft Defender for endpoint. Thank you.
Thank you, FJ. Sorry about the network call issue that is happening. I hope you're able to resolve it soon. And would we be able to go back to this again next week, or we'll just kick off from the vulnerability one?
I will start from here, then enter the vulnerability.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for doing this, and thanks everybody who joined as well. And yeah, if there are any questions, we'll have just like maybe 2 minutes if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, we're good to wrap up this.
No questions
for today.
This class was really fun.
You know, like I always encourage people, you know, if you're new and you're looking for how to create a niche, pick a solution provider, a cloud solution provider, and understand security for them, and it kind of also help you, you know, understand how to navigate across.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great